After China pushed the US's Koreans back to 100 miles south of the 38th parallel, MacArthur wanted Truman to order a dash against China.
Nice work. You chose nuclear strike, and it is correct.
Which factor contributed to the changing attitudes of the American public about U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War?
Strong choice. Graphic coverage by television news is the right answer.
What is the westernmost country shown on the map that was allied with the United States during the Cold War?
On track. Portugal is the correct answer.
Name the communists in South Vietnam that made it hard for the US to win the Vietnam War.
Correct. Viet Cong is the right answer.
What was the name of the island to which the nationalist forces retreated at the end of the war?
Good job. Your answer, Taiwan, works well here.
Which side did the U.S. support with money and weapons during Wai Wei and the Chinese Civil War?
Excellent choice. Nationalists is the right answer.
The nationalist and the communists fought together against what nation during World War I?
Right choice. Japan is the best answer.
Dash entered the Korean War when their territory was being threatened. Perfect. China is the correct choice. What country sent the most troops into South Korea during the Korean War?
Right again. United States is a valid answer.
What was the conflict between the United States and the Soviet Union that was a struggle between their ideologies of democracy and communism?
Well reasoned. The Cold War is the correct choice.
When Germany was divided between the Allied powers and the Soviet Union after World War I, Germany's capital city of Dash was also divided.
Correct response. Berlin is the most accurate answer.
Which event is illustrated by this cartoon?
Sharp thinking. Berlin airlift is the right choice.
Why did the U.S. enter the Korean War? You chose to contain communism, and it is correct.
What was the alliance between the United States and nations of Western Europe that opposed the Soviet Union during the Cold War? Smart move. NATO is an accurate answer.
Which was an uprising in China led by Red Guards with the goal of establishing a society of peasants and workers were equal.
Solid response. Cultural Revolution is a valid choice. Which is the state of diplomatic hostility between the United States and the Soviet Union in the decades following Woolley? War. Smart pick. Cold War is the correct choice. What theory caused the US to enter the Vietnam War in order to stop the expansion of communism across Southeast Asia? Clear logic. Your choice domino theory is sound and 100% true. Which is a US policy of giving economic and military aid to free nations threatened by internal or external opponents? Nice selection. Truman Doctrine is the correct and valid answer.
During the Cold War, the United States adopted the Dash in order to stop the spread of communism around the world.
Good thinking. Containment policy is the right answer. They were defeated in the Civil War in China despite $2 billion in aid sent to them from the United States.
Well done. Nationalists is the right choice.
which is a group of communist guerrillas who fought against the South Vietnamese government in the Vietnam War.
Excellent. Viet Cong is a brilliant choice.
After 3 years of fighting, the Korean War ended in a stalemate dividing North and South Korea at the dash.
Nicely done. 38th parallel is a solid answer.
United States' involvement in East Asian conflicts was primarily to prevent the spread of which ideology?
You're right. Communism is the correct answer.
What was the plan of the United States for rebuilding the Allied countries of Europe after World War I?
Great thinking. Marshall Plan is the right choice.
Which is a U.S. program of economic aid to European countries to help them rebuild after World War I. Great job.
Marshall Plan is the accurate answer.
The Korean War was the primary military confrontation of the early Cold War. What action triggered it?
You got it? Your choice, North Korean invasion of South Korea, is right. Which incident, occurring over Soviet territory, renewed tensions between the Soviets and the US?
Exactly. U2 incident makes sense, and it is right choice.
What term refers to the willingness of the US, under Eisenhower, to go to the edge of all-out war? Valid point. Brinksmanship is true. The 1954 peace talks that resulted in dividing Vietnam into northern and southern halves reflected.
Bravo. Cold War tensions is the answer.
After UN forces chased North Korea's forces northward toward the Yalu River, what did China do?
Well picked. China sent troops to support North Korea is the correct answer. The high cost of the Korean War was a major factor in the American election of which president?
Great thinking. Dwight D. Eisenhower is the right choice.
After the armistice ending the Korean War was signed, what was the negative result for Korea? Nice work. You chose continued division into North and South Korea, and it is correct. What wars were fought during the Cold War as a result of containment and the domino theory? Excellent. Korean and Vietnam War is a brilliant choice. The Dash appeared to be winning the Korean War until China actively entered the conflict. Strong choice. South Koreans is the right answer. The Gulf of Tonkin Resolution helped America get involved in which East Asia conflict? Right again. Vietnam War is a valid answer. Which of the following was characteristic of carpet bombing during the Vietnam War? Well reasoned. Chemical warfare was used is the correct choice. Which is a policy of threatening to go to war in response to any enemy aggression?
Sharp thinking. Brinkmanship is the right choice.
Which leader of North Korea invaded the South in 1950, leading to the Korean War?
Excellent choice. Kim Il-sung is the right answer.
During which event did the US and USSR come the closest to actually fighting? On track. Cuban Missile Crisis is the correct answer. Which of the following was not an issue dividing China and the Soviet Union? Bravo! Their agreement over the Cold War is the answer. In which of the following places did no fighting occur during the Cold War? Well done. France is the right choice.
The United States and the USSR came closest to nuclear war during the Dash.
You're right. Cuban Missile Crisis is the correct answer.
Where did the two major conflicts of the Cold War occur?
Correct. Korea-Vietnam is the right answer. The Cold War was a period of competition between which two countries?
Nice selection. The US and the Soviet Union is the correct and valid answer.
Which of the following events involved the CIA training Cuban exiles?
Well picked. Bay of Pigs invasion is the correct answer.
During Mui, Stalin had only joined the Allies after which event?
Good job. Your answer, German invasion of the Soviet Union, works well here.
What happened as an effect of the end of the Korean War in 1953?
Perfect. North Korea and South Korea remained divided is the correct choice.
What did Americans fear most about the Cuban Missile Crisis?
Great job. A nuclear war is the accurate answer.
Why did the United States get involved in the Vietnam War?
Clear logic. Your choice, stop the spread of communism, is sound and 100% true.
Korean and Vietnam War occurred during which time period?
Smart pick. Cold War is the correct choice.
What did young people burn to protest the Vietnam War?
Good thinking. Draft card is the right answer.
In 1950, Dash invaded Dash and started the Korean War.
Smart move. North Korea, South Korea is an accurate answer. Which of the following conflicts lasted the longest?
Solid response. Vietnam War is a valid choice.
Who came to North Korea's aid during the Korean War?
Nicely done. China is a solid answer.
Where fighting not take place during the Cold War? Correct response. United States is the most accurate answer.
Which two superpowers were involved in the Cold War?
Right choice. The US and the Soviet Union is the best answer.
What two superpowers emerged after World War A?
Exactly. United States and Soviet Union makes sense, and it is right choice.
Which of the following events happened first?
You got it.
Your choice, Korean War, is right.
Who supported North Korea during the war?
You chose Soviet Union, and it is correct.
What was the outcome of the Vietnam War?
Valid point. Vietnam was united under one communist rule is true.
The Cold War was tension between Dash.
Clear logic. Your choice, the US and Soviet Union, is sound and 100% true. How long did the Cold War last? You chose 40 years, and it is correct. What started the Korean War? Excellent choice. North Korea's invasion of South Korea is the right answer. How did the Korean War end? Great thinking. With an armistice agreement in 1953 is the right choice.
The Cold War ended when?
Right choice. The Soviet Union collapsed is the best answer.
How you will get all these quiz questions in PDF books format? On track. Contact Narayan Changda is the correct answer.